Hello my small fat adapted family and welcome back to the Great Keto Bake Off. Remember that I am trusting my ability to keto-fy high carb recipes in a very short space of time. This does mean that there's a potential that things will go wrong like they do on the show, and if they do, you get to see all of that on camera. So episode 9, the semi-final of the Great British Bake Off, was Patisserie week. The signature was 8 patisserie style layered slices. The technical was a Sablé Breton tart, and the showstopper was a bouquet display with 12 entrements, small pastries, that surrounded an edible display. Again, this is another week where I've looked at the showstopper and gone, I would rather not. I've tried a showstopper this season, I feel like I can avoid them from here on out. The signature I was quite taken by because it meant that I could have worked with a lot of different textures in a very small dessert, and Chigs' raspberry ones sounded absolutely delicious, but not only did it seem very time consuming, it also didn't get my attention as much as the technical did. And this is because a Sablé Breton tart is like the middle ground between a shortbread and a butter cookie. And then it came with these just really simple but delicious toppings. So for episode 9 of the Great British Bake Off, I will be keto-fying a raspberry Sablé Breton tart. This will be a shortbread based base, then it will have a raspberry jam slathered on it, and will be followed not by a pistachio mousseline like in the episode. Instead, I will be doing a white chocolate-esque macadamia butter, and I will top it with raspberries and chocolate. Just before we start, let me explain why I'm not going to do the pistachio creme that was in Prue's actual recipe. With this week including raspberries quite a fair bit, I'm expecting a slightly higher carb dessert, and I don't want to make it even higher carb with pistachios. There's that, and then a couple of weeks ago I made a beautiful pistachio creme on this series, and I feel like I'd just be rehashing that recipe. I'm trying to do as much different things as I can in these 10 weeks of Bake Off. Let's get cooking. So in terms of ingredients, you will need for the tart 150 grams of almond flour, 50 grams of lupin flour. As always, I am using Wholesome Provisions miracle flour. It's 100% lupin flour. If you don't have lupin flour, can't get access to it, or you don't want to use lupin flour, don't worry, just replace the 50 grams of lupin flour for 50 more grams of almond flour. Then you want 112 grams of salted butter that is soft, a third of a cup of sweetener, as always I'm using Erythritol, and 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Then for the raspberry jam, you will need 150 grams of fresh raspberries, 3 tablespoons of sweetener, 1.5 teaspoons of lemon juice, and 1.5 teaspoons of chia seeds. Then for the macadamia butter, you will need 200 grams of macadamia nuts, 2 teaspoons of cacao butter that has been melted, 2 tablespoons of cream, and 2 tablespoons of sweetener. Then finally, the 2 additional toppings that you will need are about 30 fresh raspberries, which is approximately 150 grams, and 40 grams of dark chocolate that has sort of been cut or broken into small pieces. So we're going to start by making the tart base. First thing you want to do is take your soft butter, add your sweetener, and beat that until it's nice and creamy and fluffy. Once you are happy that it is creamy and fluffy, we're going to add all of the other tart ingredients. So that's the almond flour, the lupin flour, should you choose to add it. I highly suggest it because it changes the texture quite a lot and makes it real biscuity. And then our vanilla extract. And this is going to get mixed until you have a dough that is just coming together. I resorted to just using my hand because it's a lot easier to knead it together. You don't want to overwork it though, you just want it to come together, and that should give you a nice dough lump like that. So then you're going to get your tart base. It should be about a 20 centimeter tart base. Mine is 18.5. I don't have anything closer to 20, so I'm just going to use this, and I'm going to pop my dough in the middle, and I'm just going to use my fingers to work it to the edges. Make sure you grease your tart pan if it's metal. It doesn't got the sides or anything, it just stays in the middle like a massive cookie. So once you're happy with that, you've got this really nice, thick, dense, sort of cookie-looking base that is our Sablé Breton tart base. This will go in the oven for 15 to 18 minutes. Of course, I'll check it, and I will also let you know how long it took. And I have just realised that I did not preheat the oven. So you want to preheat your oven to 170 Celsius or 325 Fahrenheit. Then you want to make this tart base. So for now, I'll just pop that to the side while the oven preheats, and we will actually probably start with the next step that we would anyway, which is our raspberry jam. So our chia seed raspberry jam is really simple. You take your fresh raspberries and you pop them over a medium heat. Then you want to add your sweetener and your lemon juice and give it a good mix. So once you've mixed it, you're just going to leave it cooking for about 5 minutes just to soften up those berries. We could probably also start the macadamia butter at this point, but I'm not going to quite yet, just because I don't want to have everything ready before the tart is even in the oven. Actually, it's only been a couple of minutes and it looks like our raspberry jam is already quite liquidy and the berries are very soft. So I'm just using my wooden spoon now to sort of squash the berries down a little bit, leaving a little bit of chunkiness. I like a little bit of lumpy raspberry in my jam. You can do this with a potato masher, you can do this with a fork. Because of the pan I'm using, I'd rather just do it with a wooden spoon to not damage the pan. Now what we're going to do is we're going to return it to the heat. The heat is going to go down to low. You're going to add your chia seeds and stir. So with the chia seeds stirred in, we're just going to leave it to bubble away and cook, stirring occasionally for about 5 minutes just to help those chia seeds expand and start sort of gellifying our jam, making it thicker. Whilst our tart is in the oven, I actually think it's a good time to start on the macadamia butter because it will get quite warm from us processing it, so then we can put it in the freezer whilst our tart is out of the oven and cooling. So to make the macadamia butter, it's again really simple. You add the macadamias to a food processor or a blender. You then add your sweetener and then you add your cacao butter. This should be the main bit that will hopefully give it a white chocolate-esque feeling. That's why we're adding cacao butter and cream to this, which we'll be doing shortly, to try and sort of mimic white chocolate to a degree, because white chocolate and raspberry is absolutely delicious. So with these ingredients here in our food processor, we're going to blend it until we have a smooth, thick paste. This can take about 3 to 5 minutes, so you just got to be patient with it. Obviously stop and scrape down the sides as and when you need to. I've been blending my macadamia butter for about 1.5 minutes and it seems to actually have already turned into a butter. It turned into it very quickly. The last thing we're going to do with this is we're going to add our cream, and then we're going to give it another good blend to really incorporate that cream, maybe aerate it a little bit just to kind of help hopefully give it that white chocolatey taste. We're going to pop this in the fridge until needed, hoping that it just thickens up a fair bit. It should do, because it's very high fat and fat solidifies pretty well. We are just absolutely breezing through this recipe because we have everything prepped pretty much now and ready to go. We're just waiting for everything to cool down or finish cooking and then cool down. So the tart in the end took about 20 minutes and I turned it a few times. It's really difficult to tell when it's actually cooked, because when it is cooked and you press in the middle, it is really soft and buttery like shortbread is. But I thought with the middle going golden already and then the edges going quite brown, it was ready. It must have been ready. So I took it out, I left it to cool for about 10 minutes and then I popped it in the fridge for about half an hour alongside everything else being in the fridge. And the base still feels a little bit warm, but I think that we can now get this out and get it topped because the top is fine, it's cool. So I think the best way to do this is to flip it onto my hand and then peel away the silicone. There we go. Oh, look at that. That's beautiful and flat. But of course that's the side that's going to be hidden. So then what we're going to do is take our jam that has cooled down, and yet it's gone considerably thicker. And we're going to add a layer of that over the top. And I'm just leaving about 1 centimetre around the edges. Why, I don't really know, but it's what Prue said to do in her recipe. It's like a sweet pizza, this. That leaves about 2 tablespoons of jam. Then we're going to get the macadamia butter that has definitely solidified, but it's got a strange sort of glossiness to it and feels very oily. And it's also not as sweet as I was hoping, actually. But I think with the sweetness of everything else, it should be fine. This, I'm going over the jam and I'm being quite gentle with it. I want quite a big helping of this. It looks very strange, this stuff does. It looks like rendered fat. Definitely doesn't look as nice as a pistachio cream would. It's so strange because it looks like it's going to melt, but it kind of just falls and then sits there. Then we're going to get our raspberries. And starting on the outside, put about 30 with the tips up. So finally is to get your chocolate and to just sprinkle it over, make it look pretty. Let's get a little bit of powdered sweetener, I think. You don't need to do this, I'm just doing this because it makes it look just a little bit more fancy. Okay, let's get a big knife and let's cut this into 8 slices. Oh, that base is so beautifully thick. Okay, let's have a taste of this Sablé. I believe I'm saying it wrong, but I'm not entirely sure which one it is. Let's have a taste of this. Let's just say Breton Tart. It might be worth mentioning that for the past 6 days, I've been on the carnivore diet, where you just eat nothing but meat and some animal products. You know, crazy experiments that I do. And this is the first sweet thing, like really sweet thing I've had. The actual tart itself is just like I hoped it would be. It's really, really buttery, not massively sweet. You can taste a bit of vanilla in there, but it's really dense and buttery, like a shortbread should be. And it's really thick as well. The jam, the raspberry jam, is very sweet for me, but it's beautiful, very raspberry flavoured. It's got a little bit of lumpiness to it because we haven't sieved it or anything like that, which is nice. The chocolate you can't really taste. The raspberry on top, you can taste the textures of it, but you can't really taste the raspberry itself. The macadamia butter, there's a lovely buttery texture, quite oily, but it really actually works with the shortbread. I put cocoa butter in it and I put cream in it, hoping that it would get quite a white chocolatey taste, but it doesn't have as much as a taste as I would have hoped for. It's predominantly the texture you get. The raspberry flavouring is really the prevalent flavour, and the butteriness of the shortbread is the prevalent texture. So get this, you won't believe this. In terms of macronutrients, this serves 8 slices. Each slice is 473 calories, 45 grams of fat, 10 grams of protein, and 4.6 net carbs. So it is not as high carb as I was expecting it to be with so many raspberries in it, but 45 grams of fat and pretty low protein? I'm not sure whether to class this as a fat bomb because it really has the high fat levels predominantly coming from the macadamia butter, but the carbs seem just a little bit too high for it to really be a fat bomb. Either way, this is pretty impressive macros with such a heavy use of fruit. Now I just need to figure out what to do instead of the macadamia butter. Maybe like a white chocolate-esque mousse might work. I'm not sure. What do you think? Let me know below. Now, thank you so much, as always, for joining me on this incredibly chaotic series. Join me next week for the final of the Great British Bake Off 2021. But with that being said, that is all for this video. Leave a like if you found it interesting, insightful or helpful. Subscribe for more keto content. Any questions, any comments, any queries, anything down below. Keep calm, keto on. Thanks for watching.